Welcome to another episode of the Felicia Taylor Arts Legacy Series. We're glad you could join us. I'm your host, Bob Merrill. Throughout this series, we're putting the spotlight on some of the prominent cultural institutions in Palm Beach County. The program honors the legacy of longtime Palm Beach resident and supporter of the arts, Felicia Taylor. We're so thrilled to welcome Ghislain, who is the CEO and director of the Norton Museum of Art. You, of course, were great friends with Felicia.
Yes, maybe more recent than many of you because I only moved here in Palm Beach, in West Palm Beach, 4 years ago during COVID. But met Felicia and Peter early on, and always amazed by the energy, the charismatic personality of Felicia, her passion for education, outreach to the underserved community. And it was very sad for us to see her leaving so early. And she's very kindly in her will has been supporting institution and really gave a support to the Norton to support program for the community and education. And we are grateful, but sad, but very grateful to her kindness and generosity.
Now, you came to the Norton in 2021, which was a heck of a time to start an endeavor right in the teeth of COVID. But the Norton dates back to, I believe, 1941.
You're absolutely right, Bob.
And who was Mr. Norton started?
So it's a very interesting story. Mr. Norton was an industrial from Chicago, did a good, very successful, but not like massively successful. He was in the steel business and did not really had a knowledge of art. So in a winter, he was spending his winter in Palm Beach, like many people, and he started collecting old master painting, like anybody on the beginning of the 20th century. When they start collecting, they go to the old master painting, like Rubens and Gainsborough and so on. So he collected a little bit, and one day decided to buy a piece of contemporary art for him, so 1910 in Chicago, and he bought a piece of art which was like three trees, a pink, a blue, and a green one, and he was annoyed to see, why do you do a pink tree? So he wrote to the artist. The artist replied, no, I'm not joking, it's real. And he had no real background in art, but he was an engineer and he wanted to understand the concept of creativity. And that will keep that word in mind because that's the reason of the museum. And talking to the artist, he wrote another letter, then he bought another piece of art, and so on and so forth. So the main part of his collection is an unbelievable collection of American and European 20th century modern art, which on the time for him was contemporary.
Right.
And all of the correspondence with Matisse, with Picasso, all of that, we have it. And he really exchanged and talked to all of his artists to understand creativity. What was contemporary for Mr. Norton, which is now modern art, was really the collection of all the masterpieces we have, from Gauguin to Monet to Matisse, Soutine, etc. And then separately, he also collected Chinese art, but that was a little bit of an accident. What's happened in 1926, someone came from New York with a collection of carved Chinese works of art to show it during the winter in Palm Beach. Mr. Norton came, looked at it, was very interested, started buying some books, got the two curators for the Metropolitan to come. They looked at the collection, told him that it was good, and he bought everything. And now we have more than 2,000 works of art of Chinese art. Then later on, he collected photography. And what is meant that now the Norton has 5 collections, all master painting, 20th century modern American, Chinese art, photography, and contemporary art. Why? Because we continue the legacy of Mr. Norton to collect contemporary art.
Now, is there a relation between the Norton Sculpture Garden? Somebody told me, no, they're actually not related.
So, they are and they are not. So, what's happened is when Elizabeth Norton passed away, Mr. Norton married a second time with an artist called Anne Norton. And Mrs. Norton had, second Mrs. Norton, a very big influence because she was a sculptor. She got her husband to be interested in sculpture. Therefore, the reason the Norton has Brancusi, Picasso sculpture, Bonnat, Mayol, and so on, that's thanks to Mrs. Norton. Later on in her life, she had her own studio, which is where the garden is. And when she passed away many years after him, her friends created the Art Norton Garden. So it's a separate 501c3. It's a very good institution. We're collaborating, but we are not the same institution. One is Mr. Norton, one is her studio.
Now, anybody that has driven down Dixie and past that front fountain with the typewriter eraser, which you have to be a certain age to even know what that thing is, And I believe that is Klaus Oldenburg.
You're absolutely right.
Every time I pay, it never fails to put a smile on my face.
Absolutely, and that's the purpose. And as you say, most of anybody below 30 years old have no idea what it is. But that's not the
And
point.
wasn't it Klaus and his wife?
It was Klaus and his wife, and that gift was really amazing because as the museum did their expansion in 8 years ago, the director on the time and the architect, Lord Norman Foster, were talking about another potential sculpture to really make a landmark, if you want, of the museum. And Norman Foster knew one of our trustees, Ronnie Heyman, who you know.
Yes.
And Ronnie Heyman had that sculpture in her garden in Connecticut. And Norman Foster convinced Mrs. Heyman to give the eraser in Palm Beach. And thanks to the architect convincing Mrs. Heyman, she very generously gave the sculpture, which is now the landmark of the Norton. Everybody knows, and is becoming, in fact, kind of a West Palm Beach iconic place. And that's thanks to her and to Norman Foster talking together.
Now, there has been a wonderful exhibition that you've had. I guess you'd call it a pugilistic exhibition, all about boxing, right?
Yes.
And I believe that's going to be open for the next month.
That exhibition on boxing, Dance Light and Strike Fast, started in November. Our exhibition are usually 4 months, so you have another month, to see it. And it's an unbelievable exhibition on every artist from the 21st century who got inspired by boxing, starting from Bellows, and we have a fabulous Bellows from the National Gallery, which is a very rare loan. And we have works by Ed Ruscha and Andy Warhol and even Mohammed Ali and so on. So you need to see that. But also the other exhibition, completely different, is a fabulous exhibition on Joachim Sorolla. Joachim Sorolla is the painter who inspired Monet. Claude Monet was inspired by Sorolla, Sorolla being Spanish, and he always said that Sorolla was the master of light. And what you see, it's Sorolla and the sea, more than 40 works of art coming from the Hispanic Society of America based in New York, of unbelievable view of children and activities on the sea, and we are in Palm Beach. And that exhibition, very contrasted with the boxing, is really a beautiful work of art. So these two exhibitions will continue for the month of March, but also we are preparing the next one in April 12, opening called Artist Jewelry. It's all the artists from the 20th century, from Picasso to Jeff Koons. At a given time, they all have done jewelry, like real jewelry. Real jewelry. So not necessarily big stone. It's about the design and so on of jewelry. They all have like it, from Calder to Armand to César. All of these amazing artists have done jewelry at a given time. So what we're going to do, it's an exhibition to show how from a two-dimensional painting and drawings, you could go to a three-dimensional wearable art. And again, back to Mr. Norton, the concept of creativity. I want the younger audience to understand that you have an artist who need to think in two-dimensional and then are able to create in three-dimensional. And that's going to be unique. It's a collection coming from Diane Venet. Diane Venet is an amazing collector in France. She's the wife of Bernard Venet, who is an internationally known artist, a sculptor. And we're the only place in the US to get that collection together. And that's going to be opening in April, going for the whole summer.
Well, I can understand Calder jewelry because he was a 3D guy to begin with. But who knew that Picasso...
Even Louise Nevelson and Louise Bourgeois, all of them have done jewelry.
Now, you also do a lot of children's programming. Talk
Yes.
a little bit about that.
We do have a department of education which had changed the name. It's called the Department of Learning and Community Engagement. And I usually tell my team, we have 16 people in that department. I want 50% of the time you inside doing program at the museum, but I want you 50% outside into the community. So we are working with more than 75 Title I school in all the west
Going
of the
to
country.
the schools.
Yes. We are working with many non-for-profit organizations working with underprivileged community, from children to senior citizens. All of that, the Norton has been doing that for 8 years. Completely supported by private philanthropy. We don't have any public funding, a little bit, but not a lot. So most of the programming we're doing are really supported by the generosity of private donation. And we are in the community working and then bringing them back to the museum, but it's really on both sides, on the west side of the county.
Now, when you came to the Norton in 2021, very challenging times in the teeth of COVID, you obviously were evaluating the ways that you can make an impact. And one thing you did was make it bilingual?
Yes, it was very important to me when I arrived. We are in Florida, where a big part of the community speaks Spanish, and I was very surprised that the Norton was not bilingual. I personally live in Guatemala, so I speak Spanish, and really quickly I told my colleagues that every label, every program and so on need to to be bilingual, which is it is. The website not yet because we're working on it, but it will be bilingual, and it's very important. And guess what? The first exhibition we did after COVID was Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo,
I saw that one.
hugely
It was
successful.
Brilliant.
It was line of people. The whole community, Spanish-speaking, came on son, which usually never came to the Norton, and that was a very important thing. And based from that experience, we continue doing a lot of program in-house for children. We do also accessibility is very important. We also develop a program for children on the spectrum. You know, autism. You have many different levels. So we do program where we welcome them to do activities with their family and so on. We try to be as welcoming for any type of challenges, I will say, and try to find a way where people feel welcome at the Norton. And that's really something from Mr. Norton, by the way.
Now, the Norton has a 200-seat theater. It has a wonderful restaurant. People also have events there. It's become the happening place to have a charity event, if you want, right?
Absolutely, charity event, and also we do weddings and we do symposium and we do bar mitzvah. It's really a place where the community could really rent a space and do a beautiful event surrounded by art.
And you've got a jazz series every first Friday of every month, isn't it?
Yes, Bob. It's in fact called Art After Dark. It's every Friday from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. The restaurant is open that night for dinner, otherwise it's only open for lunch. But every Friday we do different programs. But every first Friday of the month is jazz, but then we have also music, opera, and activities and so on. And we have been seeing for the last year a massive amount of people from Palm Beach and West Palm Beach coming that night at 5 p.m. on the Friday, close to 1,000, 1,200 people on scene. It's a buzzing with energy.
And speaking of events, just last night was the spectacular annual Norton Gala.
Absolutely, and it was also a very special one because it's a new branding. It's one night at the Norton, and we had amazing three-chair Audrey Gross, Sue Wrigley, and Amy Fallon, taking the gala to a completely different step and having an unbelievable evening. We had an honorary artist, Rashid Johnson, who was there with us, and the whole tent was inspired by his creativity. And you had the live auction with unbelievable items, and the cocktail and the post-party and so on. It was really amazing, and we had close to 750 people.
Ghislain, this has been fascinating. You are a visionary, and the Norton Museum is lucky to have you at the helm, guiding its course as we go forward here. Thanks again for coming.
Well, you're welcome, Bob. It's been a pleasure, and definitely a pleasure to do that
Felicia
under the name
would
of
have
Felicia
loved
Taylor.
it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've learned a lot more about the Norton, and make it a point to stop by for one of its many programs. Be sure and share this episode with your friends, and until next time, thanks for joining us.